What is going on, everyone? Coming at you with our Week 8 QB rankings for the USFL. Appreciate everyone tuning in. As always, these videos are a grind throughout the season. Not the sexiest form of content, but guys, if you can always, share the video around. I got a couple interviews coming up, so it should be a pretty awesome time for the channel as we wind down the USFL season. This week, quarterback play outside of the generals, pretty evenly matched. We saw Cookus and McGough uh, battle it out for the top spot. McGough's been amazing this whole season. He's the MVP front runner. MBT had a good game. Josh Love, despite the loss, had a pretty decent game. Um, right now, the playoffs are a complete mystery as no team is clinched and every team is still eligible going into week 9. So it's going to be a pretty awesome week for USFL football come this Saturday and Sunday. So getting into our rankings, do a quick shout out. Montel Crozart got into the game. He threw one pass for 3 yards, a couple plays to replace Kenji Bahar, a little dump off. So Kozart gets on the honorable mention. It's his second appearance. He's thrown for about 15 yards this year as the team's QB3, but this week he was elevated to the QB2 spot to back up Bahar. They haven't been using Terry Wilson. They've kind of eliminated that part of the game for them. As far as using him as a read option guy, he got that one start, did pretty okay. But Bahar's been the guy, been kind of utilizing him in the same way Jordan Teamu was used in the early parts of the season, a lot of safe routes. But I can get into that a little bit later. Let's start off these rankings. Excuse me. Coming in at number 9, I got Kyle Lauletta, New Jersey Generals. Last week I had him at 6. Limited sample size for Lauletta. He went 2 of 4, 16 yards, no touchdowns, 1 pick, no rushing attempts, no rushing yards. He had a tackle though. Pretty much very pedestrian. They went to Pro Cup. This is looking like the end of Kyle Lauletta. I'm hoping they have Eric Barrier on the bench. They have Pro Cup. Pro Cup had some nice flashes, put some highlight reel type rushes earlier. But the biggest thing, and we talked about it time and time again, is this is the DeAndre Johnson show. He's not in. This offense doesn't move. The closest thing they have right now is Pro Cup. So biggest fear for Lauletta is more at this point his career. Are we going to see any more of him? I've been vocal about keeping him on a USFL roster, but as far as him getting another shot at the NFL, it doesn't appear that that's going to happen. Coming in at number 8, I got Pro Cup from the Generals. 14 of 25, 128 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick, 6 rushing attempts, 76 rushing yards. It's been a minute since he's come into the game. Like I said, awesome mobility, rolling around. He underthrew some balls and he overthrew. It kind of seemed like he was, having some trouble finding his groove. Perfect quarterback for the third down rushing in Canada. They don't have that here. I don't know if Pro Cup kind of regrets coming here, maybe with his child being born and whatnot, but I think the Dakota Pro Cup show needs to kind of come to an end, and they need to throw Barrier out there. If you don't know who Eric Barrier is, I made a video about him. I had him in that number 3 role. I'm not sure if Riley's ready to pull the trigger, but with Johnson out, Lauletta ineffective, Barrier might be the move. If not, I hope they do start Pro Cup going into week 9, especially with this win now mode and winning you're in type thing. If Jersey loses to the Stars clinch, and then that's it. Number 7, I got Kenji Bahar. Like I talked about in the earlier parts of the video, they're playing very safe with him right now. He hasn't been able to air it out much. They do have a decent amount of weapons, but this offense is running through Mark Thompson. It's the Mark Thompson show. He's got 13 touchdowns this week. Bahar went 11 of 20 for 128, 1 touchdown, no picks, 6 rushing attempts, 5 rushing yards. Very safe performance. We saw a lot of strides from him prior to his injury. He had a good game, granted, and when he got back, I felt like that week was actually the worst week of quarterback play, so he kind of just benefited from playing a safe game and whatnot. But in the end, it looks like they're playing a very conservative game. Looks like a lot what they did with Teamu on the rollouts for the past 2 weeks, and they're just kind of letting Mark Thompson be the guy there. it's working out for them. They obviously won. Everyone's fighting for a playoff spot in the South, but in the end, Bahar just kind of dinking and dunking his way to victory. Very reminiscent of Alex Smith in that 2015 season. Coming in at number 6 for the Pittsburgh Maulers, I got Troy Williams. Last week he was number 8, 20 of 26, 214 passing yards, no touchdowns, no picks, 7 rushing attempts, 36 rushing yards, and a touchdown. Big thing about Williams this week, he's obviously the better quarterback on the field, put the team in a position to win. Chris Blewett couldn't make the game-winning field goal, and that's obviously why they lost. Williams been the spark of this team. He completed almost 77% of his passes, 76.9. He's been thoroughly improving as a passer. Last week, they didn't really use him in the rushing attack. Very limited with Groshek. Madre London didn't really get many touches last week. This week, the rushing game was part of that little diet three-headed monster they have. Bailey Gaither obviously being utilized as well on some end arounds. In the end, I don't think the Generals or the Maulers have enough juice to make a playoff push. To throw in the Panthers. Michigan is playing Pittsburgh this week. I think because of the offense and whatnot, or excuse me, because of the Michigan defense, Troy's going to have a huge trouble making some plays. He's starting to utilize the tight end a little bit more. They've been really big in throwing with the Mason Stocky as well. So they got plenty of weapons with Henny, with Gaither, with Seibert, with Mason Stocky, and they also have, don't forget, Trey Walker, who hasn't really been utilized. Even a guy from last year that was one of their top 3 options, Jalen McCluskey, hasn't been utilized as well. So we'll see what happens with Williams. Overall, he's made this team way more competitive. You kind of got to wonder if they started him in one of the first 2 games, if they could have snuck out a victory and been 3-5 or 3-5 in a different position for a playoff spot moving forward into the season, especially because they beat Michigan early in the season. Coming in at number 5, I got Cole Kelly. Last week I had him at 2. Kelly's leaving the ball up there a little bit. He's throwing the ball a little bit high. I've seen that a lot. He had Derek Dillon on a touchdown pass. Felt like that, he threw it a little bit high. Ball's kind of sailing. Threw a silly pick. Didn't, kind of mismatch between his receiver, Vinny Papali, and him. Overall, a big part of the reason why he dropped is because of MBT and Josh Love and Cookus and McGough all having obviously better weeks than him. The stat line is something that's not so sexy. It was 15 to 24, 176, no touchdowns, 1 pick, 12 rushing attempts, 24 rushing yards. Big thing about him, and he also fumbled. One of the big things you like to see with Kelly is that he had 3 or 4 first downs with his legs. A lot of those are on those QB sneak plays, those impromptu Philadelphia QB sneaks. They've won 5 games in a row with this guy at quarterback. Once again, it's kind of one of those teams that you wonder if they went with Kelly instead of Brady White, who played at Memphis, that they could be in a little bit more of a solid position, especially with that 42, or it was a 42-3 loss, or 42-2 loss in week 2 to the Stallions. Overall, Kelly is the guy in Memphis. He's shown a lot of improvement. You just want to see him kind of push the ball downfield a little bit, be a little bit more precise with passes, set his feet. Sometimes it feels like he's not really driving the ball with his whole body. It's my biggest thing with him. But in the end, he's such a big guy. Let him use all that strength. Let him make some plays downfield. Coming in at number 4, I'm picking up Josh Love. Last week, I had him at number 3. Him and MBT could have flipped. I was going with the victory. But overall, Love's been improving over the last 3 weeks after a really nasty skid for them. He threw over 221 yards, 2 touchdowns, 22 of 31, had a pick at the end, 2 rushing attempts, 8 rushing yards, and a fumble. I mean, this team's all in with Josh Love. They obviously got rid of Eric Barrier, as he's with the Generals now. They got Brian Lewerke backing up Love. Right now, it's the Josh Love show. They're going to ride or die with this guy. Even though they did lose, they were in a position to come away with a victory. With that being said, it does appear that Love's going to be the guy for the next 2 weeks. Love's thing has been the whole the whole thing this whole season. He's been good at times. It's been a very slow start for him. some clock management issues. It appears Michigan had no timeouts when the Breakers had the ball at the end. So that's not really on him. Regardless, Love is the best when he's throwing down the seams. That's been his bread and butter all year. And when he's finding Trey Quinn or Joe Walker on some dig routes and whatnot, and those guys are able to stretch the field. I'm not really worried about Love too much. Taking on the Maulers, it's going to be the Stars that kind of make things a little bit more difficult. But if they win, the Panthers are in the playoffs, and then they're going to fight for the North Division. Coming in at number 3, I got McLeod Bethel-Thompson. Last week I had him at 4. This week he went 25 of 34, 328, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, no rushing attempts, no rushing yards. This guy was finding Johnny Dixon and Jonathan Adams all day, sprinkling some Sage Surratt with some Wes Hills, who really wasn't too crazy in the rushing attack. He had 22 carries, 36 yards, something like that, but found him out of the backfield for another 37. And it was a total team effort. One of his interceptions was a tip pass off his wide receiver's hands. Don't really fault him for that, but MBT's doing what he's been doing since he's been in the CFL. Be dominant for 4 or 5 passes and then make a boneheaded mistake and be ineffective. Regardless, the Breakers are back in the win column. They have some of the most dynamic playmakers in this league, and they're going to continue to succeed. And then really now it just comes on, for all these USFL teams, these divisional matchups that have been backlogged in the end of the season, which I like the fact they did. It's going to come down to see what all these guys can do against their divisional foes to see if any of these quarterbacks are in the playoffs. You got a guy like MBT who's been there, done that. Not a bad spot to be in. Coming in at number 2, I got Case Cookus, Philadelphia Stars. Last week I had him at 5. This week he went 20 of 32, 265, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, 5 rushing attempts, 19 rushing yards. Big thing, once they got that new offensive tackle, Himmelman, it's thoroughly improved. They made a switch at left guard. Cookus has been able to stay upright a little bit more. I think they said over the last 4 games they've only given up like 4 or 5 sacks, much better than like the 13 they gave up in the first 3 games. It was a heroic effort. If it wasn't for some McGough magic that we see all the time, Cookus is a 5-3 has a 5-3 record with the Stars in sole control of the North Division lead. I do think they come into the playoffs, obviously, but it does seem like all the best teams are obviously in the South by their record. Big thing for Cookus as well. He became the first USFL quarterback in this modern era, throw for over 3,000 yards and 20 touchdowns. He's currently at 22 with the 3 he tossed. The pass protection is what's keeping him effective. He's able to also maneuver and be athletic. The guy did used to play wide receiver. And overall, it's just he seems a lot more confident with everything going on and moving forward. Seems like some adjustments were made, and the team is succeeding. Despite this loss, they still had the Stallions on the ropes. Number 1, pretty easy to pick that one out. Alex McGough, Birmingham Stallions. Last week I had him at 1. 24 of 35, 333 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks, 5 rushing attempts, 19 rushing yards. He had a fumble. Put together another performance with a last-second touchdown drive as well. I mean, every week this guy is making plays. He's making highlights. Even on some of his incompletions, he's breaking tackles in the pocket, maneuvering around. He's still keeping his eyes downfield, which is the big thing. He's not a run-first quarterback. He obviously has the athletic ability to rush for a lot of yards, but in the end, McGough's the MVP. He's been awesome. He's totaled 20 touchdowns this year. He's got 16 through the air, 4 rushing, and that joins a company of all football quarterbacks since 2000. Like Tommy Maddox had 20, Ben DiNucci had 23, and AJ McCarron had 25 total touchdowns. They got 2 games left. They can really solidify some things with a win. I know they clinch if they win, but they don't clinch the South Division. South Division number 1 seed. So we may get a full dose of Alex McGough for the final 2 weeks. Overall, like I said, he's been the MVP of this whole season. The biggest thing, honestly, in question, in my opinion, and who comes out to be the number 2 running back, especially with some regression from Wes Hills, is going to be Reggie Corbin, Darius Victor for the All USFL team. That's a bigger question to me than who's going to be the MVP of the USFL. So those are my USFL quarterback rankings, guys. I appreciate you tuning in. Like I said, we got a couple guests coming in on the show. As always, like, share, subscribe. I appreciate it tremendously. I think we're doing some decent things on the channel. It's growing a bit. A lot of people are giving me feedback, whether it be in comments or DMs. But once again, guys, thank you for tuning in, and y'all have a great night.